Modern poetry began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It is different from the traditional poetry that came before it. If we talk about characteristics of modern poetry, it reflects the changes in society, culture, and people's thinking during this time. This kind of poetry challenges traditional forms and explores new ways of expressing thoughts and feelings. Use of free verse. One of the most important characteristics of modern poetry is the use of free verse. Free verse is a type of poetry that does not follow regular rhyme or meter patterns. Traditional poetry has a specific structure, like rhyming lines or a set rhythm. Modern poets wanted more freedom to express their ideas without being limited by these rules. Free verse allows poets to write in a way that feels more natural and closer to everyday speech. This means the lines can be of any length, and there is no need for a specific rhyme scheme. This gives modern poets more flexibility to explore their thoughts and emotions. Consider these lines from Walt Whitman's poem, Song of Myself. Notice how there is no specific rhyme or rhythm. Whitman is free to express his observations and feelings without any constraints. Use of vivid imagery. Modern poetry relies heavily on imagery. Imagery is the use of vivid and descriptive language to create pictures in the reader's mind. The poets can help readers see, hear, smell, taste, and feel what they are describing by using imagery. Imagery makes poetry more engaging and allows readers to connect with the poet's experience. Modern poets use imagery to make their poems more powerful and memorable. Let's look at an example of imagery in William Carlos Williams' poem, The Red Wheelbarrow. In these lines, Williams uses imagery to describe the scene. The reader can easily visualize the red wheelbarrow and the white chickens. Use of symbolism. Symbolism is also one of the important key characteristics of modern poetry. A symbol is something that represents something else than the apparent meaning. Poets use symbols to convey deeper meanings and ideas without directly stating them. This adds layers of meaning to the poem and allows readers to interpret it in different ways. Modern poets use symbols to discuss complex themes such as love, death, and identity. Symbols can be objects, characters, or even actions that stand for something beyond their literal meaning. Consider the following lines from T.S. Eliot's poem, The Waste Land. In this example, April and lilacs could symbolize rebirth and renewal, while the dead land might represent a state of desolation or stagnation. The poet leaves it up to the reader to interpret the deeper meaning. Focus on individual experience. Modern poetry focuses on the individual experience and personal emotions. It is also one of the major characteristics of modern poetry. Poets write about their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. They make their work more personal and intimate. This focus on the individual is a reflection of the changing society, where people began to value personal freedom and self-expression more highly. By sharing their personal experiences, poets allow readers to connect with them on a deeper level. This makes modern poetry more relatable and meaningful. A poet like Sylvia Plath writes about her personal struggles in her poem, Lady Lazarus. These lines express Plath's personal feelings and invite the reader to empathize with her experience. Themes of alienation and isolation. One of the significant characteristics of modern poetry is the exploration of themes of alienation and isolation. During the modern period, society underwent significant changes, including urbanization, technological advancements, and world wars. These changes left people feeling disconnected and alone. Modern poets capture these feelings of alienation and isolation in their work. They explore the challenges of living in a rapidly changing world and the impact it has on individuals. Consider a poem by W. H. Auden, The Unknown Citizen. These lines express the poet's sense of isolation and anonymity in a bureaucratic society. Social and political commentary. Modern poetry includes social and political commentary. Poets use their work to address important issues in society, such as inequality, war, and justice. By writing about these topics, poets can raise awareness and provoke thought and discussion. Modern poets believe that poetry can be a powerful tool for social change. They use their work to challenge the status quo and inspire readers to think critically about the world around them. A poem by Langston Hughes, Let America Be America Again, addresses the theme of social inequality. These lines highlight the poet's desire for equality and justice in America. Ambiguity and complexity. Ambiguity and complexity are two major characteristics of modern poetry. This means that poems may not have a clear, straightforward meaning. Instead, they can be interpreted in multiple ways. This characteristic invites readers to think deeply and come to their own conclusions about the poem's meaning. Ambiguity and complexity make modern poetry more engaging and thought-provoking. They encourage readers to explore different interpretations and find their own personal connections to the poem. Consider a poem by Wallace Stevens, The Snow Man. These lines can be interpreted in various ways, and each reader might find a different meaning. Rejection of Romanticism. Modern poetry rejects the ideals of Romanticism. Romanticism focused on nature, emotion, and the sublime beauty of the world. Modern poets prefer to explore the harsh realities of life and the complexities of human experience. This rejection of Romanticism is a response to the changing world and the challenges people faced during the modern period. Modern poets seek to capture the true essence of life, even if it is not always beautiful or ideal. A modern poet like Ezra Pound writes about the struggles of daily life in his poem, In a Station of the Metro. These lines reflect the poet's focus on the difficulties of modern life, rather than the idealized beauty celebrated by romantic poets. Use of everyday language. Use of everyday language is also amongst the characteristics of modern poetry. The modern poets use everyday language and make their poems more accessible and relatable. Traditional poetry used formal or elevated language that could be difficult for readers to understand. Modern poets choose words and phrases that are closer to how people speak in their daily lives. Using everyday language helps poets connect with their readers and convey their ideas more clearly. It also makes modern poetry more inclusive and relevant to a broader audience. A modern poem by Carl Sandburg, Fog, includes simple, everyday language. These lines use straightforward language to describe the fog and make the poem easy to understand and relate to. Conclusion. In conclusion, free verse, imagery, symbolism, focus on individual experience, themes of alienation and isolation, social and political commentary, ambiguity and complexity, rejection of romanticism, and use of everyday language are characteristics of modern poetry. Modern poetry challenges readers to think deeply and find their own interpretations. By understanding these characteristics of modern poetry and the works of poets like Walt Whitman, William Carlos Williams, T.S. Eliot, Sylvia Plath, W. H. Auden, E. E. Cummings, Langston Hughes, Wallace Stevens, Ezra Pound, and Carl Sandburg, we can better appreciate the richness and depth of modern poetry.